And we are live, I think. Let me check. Hasn't updated yet. Oops. Okay.
And we don't have intro music or anything yet, huh?
Nope. Real simple.
Well, I sent it, but
yeah, I know. I got to work on all this.
I mean, all the people watching this probably know us.
Probably.
Or one of them might make a video.
Okay, so it sounds like I can hear everybody. Cool. All right. So, hello everyone. This is the first ever episode of the United Voluntary Action Podcast. My name is Magnus. Most of you know me because you probably hear from my channel. But if you didn't know who I am, I've been on Jimmy Dore and Alex Jones and a bunch of other places. Boogaloo Boy and an activist. And with me, I got two other lovely, lovely individuals that I'm going to be running this podcast with. If you guys kind of want to introduce who you are, if you want to go first, Star.
I'm Star. I've been an activist on the left side of things for over 20 years since WTO protest. I'm pretty active on the ground in the Pacific Northwest. And I think that uniting the different groups that are more anti-authoritarian and of similar mind frames is the way to go at this point so that we can actually make bigger change.
Heck yeah. And Kitty?
So I've been active also for around 20 years. I do more local things, outreaches. One of the things that we did was a group that would bring in artists like musicians, poets, and then along with local activists and businesses that all pertain to our city. That was really cool to do. I also do cat rescue, hence the name Kitty. So been active in the city for quite a while.
Yeah, so our little gaggle of interesting characters here. And I guess for a quick explanation of kind of what the whole UVA thing is, it's a very new idea, very fresh movement. We all came up to it together of kind of jumping off of this idea that I've been advocating for a while of getting all these groups together and kind of focusing on shared goals and starting to build kind of an infrastructure for that. Because there's a lot of instances where people don't know about events or local organizers don't have a platform to talk about their events or what they are about or what they're trying to accomplish. And a lot of times, when that does happen, it only goes out to one side or another. And we're trying to transcend that. We're trying to get it to where everybody's on the same page. And if there's an event going on where all of the different groups, whether it be BLM, AFA, 3%ers, even like any particular group, if we can find common ground on an issue, we're all going to try to get people together and operate as sort of the group to organize that and get everybody down there. And kind of a perfect example of that, Mr. Caboose, sorry for the late intro. He's kind of, spearheading one of the very first groups of the first Boogaloo Run anti-ice event in Atlanta. So if you want to kind of just explain what you're all about and what you're trying to accomplish down there.
So I'm Caboose. I'm a Boogaloo boy, and I have not really been that involved in activism for very long. Every now and then I volunteer and stuff, like the J17, we gave some homeless people stuff. And that was pretty much the first event that I've been a part of. And so the anti-ice thing, that's going to be on February 20th at 1 p.m. outside of the Atlanta Immigration Center, or Atlanta Immigration Court, sorry. Anyways, there was a gynecologist that was doing some unnecessary hysterectomies. And, I mean, that's not cool. Say the very least.
That's probably like the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
I actually have an article pulled up about this real quick. Hopefully this opens the right thing. Not that one. Yes, okay, this is this one. So it's pretty bad for the fact that this person has the nickname the uterus collector, This is how
Yeah.
awful this is going on at this particular ICE facility in Atlanta. There's several like nurse whistleblowers that have come out and brought up that there's dozens and dozens of women when she was looking through the books that had hysterectomies, and she started being like, well, there's no way that like all of these migrant women have like issues like that to where that would be required. So I can go and like read through this real fast. So yes, the whistleblower, Dawn Wooden, said that she believed the women who did not speak English very well did not fully understand why the procedure had been performed on them. So it's kind of going into like what we've seen at these ICE camps before, where you have, non-native speaking individuals that are kind of forced into this situation. And a lot of times they're given either legal advice or medical advice or things like that they don't really understand what's going on. They're not provided an interpreter, and they're kind of just dragged along in this situation. And then a lot of times they get into really iffy legal situations and really iffy situations regarding their asylum and stuff like that, because you have these federal agents kind of just taking them for a ride.
Well, and I think that we all understand why the evil fascist powers that be are doing this. And it's to take away women's ability to have what they would call an anchor baby or things like that. It is absolutely genocide. Is absolutely designed to take away, but the thing is, immigrating illegally into the US or even jumping the border is a misdemeanor. It's not even a major crime. It's not something people should be incarcerated for any period of time whatsoever, let alone years. It is not something that you should have your ability to have your own children taken away over. And if they actually wanted to reduce the number of babies being born in the US with, immigrant parents, then wouldn't vasectomies be more simple? Why are we mutilating women, putting them through major surgery, and basically sentencing them to have their uterus removed and their birth sovereignty and their choice as a woman to have their own children taken away because of what? We're not saying that it's because of fear of them having an anchor baby or whatever, but that seems to be what it's lined up with.
I mean, it could have that motivation, but also a lot of these immigrants don't have a lot of medical care with this COVID and everything going on. There's not, they're being delayed. So I guess maybe this gynecologist went in and he was like, hey, nothing else happening with these people. Let me go ahead and give them my most expensive procedure and just bankroll this.
Yeah,
that's build the government, build the state.
Yeah, that's really important thing to like bring up there is a lot of these people are like not getting COVID tests or not getting routine care, yet you have this doctor in the center being able to perform a fuck ton of hysterectomies.
Yeah.
It's like,
What we also don't realize too is that the US has a history of performing hysterectomies and vaccine tests on people of color or people that didn't speak English.
Yeah, this isn't new. This goes back
this
even
this is nothing new at all. There's nothing to be surprised about this. I'm surprised though that it's still occurring. Like
it's fascism, it's genocide.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and it's not getting it's not even within right, sorry.
I was gonna say this is nothing new to dehumanize women. And it's a power thing, plain and simple.
Absolutely, and this this goes all the way back to like the Bush days, and it's something that doesn't even get talked about a whole lot.
It's even before that.
Yeah,
Native Americans.
Yeah, no, I mean, like particularly with ICE, seeming ICE is like everybody talks like, oh, we can't get rid of ICE. It's part of the border and whatever. ICE is not it's not an old organization. It's a very new thing under the Department of Homeland Security. So pretty much since like the founding of ICE, they've been doing this shit. And then obviously you can go all the way back to what they did to the Native Americans, like the Tuskegee syphilis experiments and all that shit too. But it's very much baked in kind of the DNA of ICE to kind of do these like really behind closed doors, like they don't want to admit it. This had to have the whistle blown on it, like experiments, like fucking with people.
I mean, after.
Sorry, Liz.
I was going to say they've even done that with mentally challenged people.
Yes.
Where they forced hysterectomies on them or sterilization. It happened in Germany. Like this isn't a new thing for any culture. or any nationality or anything like that.
Yeah, it's definitely like a go-to tool of like
Yeah.
governments like this. Is the first thing they do is they go for the other in society, which, you know, the immigrant is pretty much the bottom, like other, like, you know, especially if you're an illegal immigrant when it comes to how the law treats you and your rights and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they go for those groups first, and then they kind of treat them as test beds for a lot of this stuff. And it's been going on for so long. And even like in anti-ICE circles, like obviously not the deeper thing like you guys are, you know, informed activists, but like the average like Twitter person like talking about ICE, they don't really bring up like a lot of things like this of the hysterectomies and a lot of the other like horrible shit that's going on. They focus on people being in cages, which, you know, is bad, of course.
Well,
but there's like a whole other level of fucked up shit going on too.
Yeah, of genocide.
Yeah,
this is by definition textbook genocide.
Yeah.
And when did this broke? What, last October, September?
I think it was September. Let me
and it hasn't gotten that much. Like it pretty much was wiped underneath the rug. You know, that it wasn't talked about. It was like maybe 2 articles about it, and then everybody forgot about it.
So I saw when they were first being questioned, they were like, "Well, this was an anonymous tip. You got to treat it with that kind of." And anyways, the government in general, they're not as transparent as they should be, because like, hey guys, as a taxpayer, that's my money. I should be getting an itemized list of every single thing you do, at the very least. I mean, no matter what side of you're on, that is, you know, the very least they should be doing. And because at this point they're just doing shit and not telling people about it, so people don't even have the opportunity to speak up about it. But yeah, the most recent thing I saw on it was sometime in January, telling me that the guy's court date was in February. And I've talked to a couple of reporters, and they don't even know what day in February it is. So
yeah, and that's like a very common thing when it comes around like government whistleblowers is, you know, if I get arrested tomorrow, then anyone in this chat could just look up my court date. Like, it's all public information, all that. But whenever it's the government doing shady shit, they don't announce when the court date's supposed to be. Things get moved around a lot. Like, it's not public record. A lot of the internal court documents that are usually released to the public aren't in these situations. To where, like, if it was an anonymous tip and there was nothing to it, then why is there all this cloak and dagger bullshit going around this particular facility? You know, it's really, really suspicious.
Well, and hysterectomies aside, so evidently they stopped the hysterectomies or whatever, and they're not. Yeah. Excuse me, I had to sneeze. So, but let's talk about ICE in general. I mean, ICE in general right now are these prolonged prisons, these detention centers. And we had a huge victory here in Washington recently after a lot of pressure. We had a ICE detention center down here near where I live that was actually on some native land even, or affiliated with that.
Of course.
Anyway, finally, the Cowlitz County Superior Court said that these kids, it was juvenile offenders, actually, this camp, that they had a contract with the government for a set period of time, but that they have had children there longer than they even will keep children as inmates. And that the government has violated the contract, that they need to figure out what to do with these children, that the Superior Court is ending their contract with the government and with ICE, and they're no longer going to hold the children. So, I mean, I read it and I'm like, okay, great. They're refusing to take more children and keep them held incarcerated indefinitely. And the thing, it says all these kids were offenders. Yeah, what? Offenders of jumping a border? They're not criminals unless, you know, we're counting coming to this country. But if these kids had done something legitimate like theft or something violent, they wouldn't have been held that long. And that's the point.
Yeah. And I remember looking in, there's like instances of like kids getting busted for like petty shoplifting or something like that. And then they sit in these fucking camps for like months
or years.
Yeah. It's over like they got arrested, like trying to like palm a Snickers from a gas station. And then they go and sit in a camp for indefinite periods, no trial, no court, no recourse, a lot of instances, no medical care. And the whole system from top to bottom is just fucked.
Yeah. So the question is, so the Superior Court is going to end the contract with the government, but they have a whole bunch of youth detained through the ICE thing. So where are they going to go? Well, the idea is if every state starts saying, no, we will no longer do this, then maybe there can be significant change. I mean, we see it as a victory because we're ending the contract, but then what? They're just going to be taken to a different facility. They're going to build new facilities. I mean, we don't really know yet what's going to become of the kids.
Right, and there's a lot of cases where like kids just disappear. Like they don't know where they went. They don't have any accountability for them. More than a few instances, these kids have popped up in sex trafficking stings. So it's like, how do you go from a federal facility to ending up with some sex trafficker in like 3 states over? Like that's,
well, what was it? 525, I believe, was the last count that I heard about how many kids were missing.
Yeah,
it's over 500 that they've totally like lost
track of.
Right. Yeah. And and like considering the state of these facilities, they're probably not escaping. Like, you know, so there's something else going on here.
Well, I mean, there was a CPS facility. I saw a First Amendment auditor that was recording the CPS facility that was sending children into foster homes of known sexual predators. And I mean, so it's not just I mean, yeah, we need to figure out where those children are, what to do with the children that are already in there, find their families, hook them up, get them back together. But if the government just didn't separate them in the first place, we wouldn't have to worry about the government giving them to sexual predators.
Right. Because like,
that would just be a non-issue.
That was the whole like conservative argument about separating the kids. Is they're like, oh, we don't know if the people bringing them across the border are human traffickers. And it's like, okay, fine. So then how are those kids ending up in the hands of fucking human traffickers? You know, like,
right.
What the hell is going on here?
Well, then the other issue is let's get into the economics of ICE. You know, everyone's afraid of what the illegal immigrants coming into the country do to the economy, but how expensive are these camps? How expensive is it to maintain? Of course, they give out government contracts. And so government contractors are making a boatload of money for their meals, for their housing, for their whatever. And the taxpayers are paying for it. And it's costing us more than other people taking jobs that most Americans don't want anyway.
Right.
Like,
and
why are we so worried
really
about
important.
the immigration problem? Now we have a thing. It's we're paying to illegally incarcerate people for an indefinite time and lose their children and give them hysterectomies. And it is they make. I feel like they try to talk to the right. Oh, these people are going to come for jobs. There won't be good jobs because it's going to go to illegal immigrants. Well, instead, they're going to rob your taxpayer dollars to keep them in prison.
Yeah,
it's going to cost far more than a job you probably didn't want.
Well, and that's been proven too that you know, with the migrant farmers, they tried to do something where they would pay Americans to go and do the migrant farming, and the Americans backed out of it because of the poor conditions.
Yeah.
So I mean, the migrant farming isn't even anything that Americans want to do. And they're complaining that these migrant farmers are coming in and taking jobs, and it's like, well, it's a job you don't even want.
Yeah, and definitely living in Chicago, I can protest that every single kitchen was full of South American immigrants, and anytime we got a new like white kid or something, he didn't hang. You know, but you'd have like these Hispanic dudes that had been like probably illegal that had been working in these kitchens for years and years and years, and they were fine with it. They could handle the volume of work. They could do that. But every time we got some local Chicago kid, he'd work there for 2 weeks and then quit because the job's too hard. So, you know, it's like, even outside of that, a lot of these people are entrepreneurs, obviously. Like you have a lot of people that just go and just build pop-up shops, build, you know, like carts, even something as simple as that. And they get fucked with real bad by CPD. And they were kind of just only harassed up until all the ICE stuff happened. And then they started showing up with ICE agents and not even arresting these people in Chicago, but literally just like breaking their shit and fucking with them. So that, you know, typical like federal agent bullshit, intimidation, you know, like, hey, turn in where's all your friends and family? We're going to keep destroying your things and stalking you and fucking with you until you become an informant, which is a very typical federal agent thing to do. They do that in the ATF, the FBI, and even now in ICE through trying to get people to narc on other migrants through harassment and bullying and destroying their property.
So, I mean, even if we're talking about the cost, there are over 500,000 detainees in ice facilities every year across 200 different facilities. It costs upwards of $100, about $200 per day for each of those people. So anytime I talk with right wing guys, they're talking about well, I don't want them just coming over here and living off my taxes, welfare, blah blah. I'm like, if you gave them $3,000 a year every single detainee, it would cost less than tax money. So I don't know where your argument's at.
Well, and tax money, actually, someone explained this very well to me. Most of the people who are working here illegally have bogus Social Security numbers. They pay money and their money comes out of their checks. They pay money into Social Security and taxes that they can't ever get back out. It ends up and so they actually, I once saw a model of how much they pay into Social Security and benefits that they can't ever claim versus what little bit of benefits they actually get with our tax dollars. And they pay more in taxes than they get in benefits. And costs, they can't just come and get full medical care, and they can't get food stamps, and they can't qualify for a million different things, but they are working and they are paying taxes that go into this pit of Social Security claims that never get claimed.
Right. It's just so funny to me because they're like, I always get into it with like the food stamps like argument of like, oh, there's all these migrants coming in here and they're getting like illegal food stamps. And I'm like, okay, well, even if they are, like, there's tons of Americans doing that now. So like, if you think that's a problem, then you're going after the wrong system. And I don't even think that's a problem, really. Like if you're desperate enough to be like lying to get food stamps, then probably you deserve it. So if like it's just where it's couched in like fear of these migrants when it's like, okay, even if that is the problem you think it is, there's a bigger problem that's more important than that. So be honest about what you're afraid about,
We could always
why
reduce
are we
the tax
withholding
burden
food when we throw so much of it away?
When it's illegal to give homeless people food? 7-Eleven will literally get ticketed if they give out their like donuts at the end of the day to homeless people.
Literally we throw away so much food that we could feed everybody.
Well, and the cost of what goes to food stamps is such a fraction of a fraction of the Department of Ag budget. Can we just like not worry about it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
I still don't even think that illegal immigrants are getting food stamps.
No, they can't. They can't apply for them.
I haven't ever heard of them able. Like, I'm hearing this.
There is instances through like the bogus Social Security numbers and stuff where like probably a small number of people are getting through, but you're talking like irrelevant numbers. Who fucking cares?
Or you can do like food banks, but all the food is donated that way. So it's not coming from the federal government if you go through a food bank.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of that is like, especially in the Chicago like areas and stuff, there was a fucking food bank like every other day from other different places, and you'd see just shit tons of like migrant people there. And obviously, like these communities are very insular. They all take care of each other like very well too. So you'll see a lot of like, inter-aid between that.
So if we have the tax dollars, like American taxes can't pay for them, well, actually, the money that people pay to Social Security they can't ever take out because they don't have a real Social Security card more than covers that. So that's a moot point.
Right.
And we really have an immigrant problem. And what I also look at is most of them are indigenous to the Americas. We're like always America, right? The reality is we're talking about indigenous Americans mostly from Mexico or South America. Basically, when the lines went up, there was indigenous people that in our country that we call Native Americans, and the people on the other side of that imaginary line were Mexicans or South Americans or whatever. They're continental citizens of this part of the world. I think that we need to review how we look at illegals that don't need to be here. We're the ones with the skin that does exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And there's so many instances where like they made this big deal about ICE, and they make this big deal about all these like why we need to build up the border and we need more security and we need all this stuff. Yeah, there's like videos, infamously InfoWars. It wasn't InfoWars. I forget who it was, but they literally took an elephant and like a circus elephant and marched it back and forth across the border, and nobody came and said anything about it. So it's like is this really why you're doing this? Is it really about border security that you're like running around and like grabbing people and stuff like that? Because if that's the case, it doesn't seem like that's what you're prioritizing. It seems that you're way more interested in detaining people and grabbing people and fucking with people. And that's it's like a misdirection for the conservatives where they're like, oh, we care so much about the border, yet that's not where any of this is going on. The detention camp is in fucking Atlanta. There's one in Chicago. There's one in like
There's
Minneapolis.
some up here by Canada.
Right. Like what fucking border, like.
Well, and they've also proven that the people that are considered illegal are people that have overstayed their visas. It's not even people coming through the border that we have the issues with.
Yeah, and it's particularly scary because the article just came out like a couple days ago of Biden's interested in doing the digital border wall, which was the same shit that George W. Bush did. And this is actually way scarier than like Trump's wall, because if you look into it, there's this concept called the Constitution Free Zone that exists within 200 miles of the Mexican border. And it essentially gives like ICE and DHS and everything the ability to violate the Constitution of people around there if they believe they're an illegal immigrant. What they want to do is have facial recognition cameras and drones flying over the border and wiretaps and like broad authority to spy on pretty much fucking everyone from 200 miles from the border, which kind of goes to my point of like, okay, if you're telling me what you're concerned about is illegal immigrants crossing the border, then why are you spying on people 200 miles from the border? Like, what is your actual intentions here? What do you like? Because I don't believe it's for what you say it's for. And that's what I try to tell these conservatives all the time is like, if it's about processing migrants, then why are they in these like shitty facilities? If it's about maintaining immigration, why are they giving them hysterectomies? If it's about protecting the border, why are they spying on people 200 miles from the border? And why are like random women in Chicago, other side of the continent from the Mexican border being thrown in these detainment camps? So it's like, what is actually fucking going on here with this very shady, new, gross federal agency that we have that is ICE?
And what is the cost and what is the actual objective? Do we really have such a severe immigration problem? And is any of this solving it or costing less? Or is it just the nature of government to get bigger and bigger and bigger and more powerful?
Yeah, and like everything they're proposing seems to have a more likely chance of screwing someone like me over than like an actual illegal immigrant. So it's like, what's going on here? I don't trust you. I don't trust the federal government to be asking for these powers and trying to go on. Like the Donald Trump border wall thing was just kind of stupid. I was like, well, that's not going to fucking accomplish anything. But that's all it was. To where now, like under Joe Biden, like they're literally talking about granting essentially like DMZ in North Korea level surveillance and like spying on people and shit all around the border. And that like, no matter what Joe Biden says, if he wants a wall like that, you don't think that it's not going to be immediately used to grab a bunch of people that may have passed through ICE and maybe have been around long enough or smart enough in their community to not get grabbed the first time? Like, how are they supposed to escape like facial recognition drones flying over like Austin and shit? It's horrifying to think about. It's some new world order shit, like for real.
Anytime the government does anything, I try to think of it as the American people are tax cattle, and whatever it is, they're trying to keep their cattle in the fences and trying to keep the cattle working. And prisons, detention centers, everything, it only serves the purpose of bringing people into their prime and keeping them there so they can put in work for the government for free.
Kitty brought up a point earlier I forgot to address on. A lot of these facilities are private.
Yeah,
and that's a whole
contracts.
That's a whole nother gross fucking part of it, of like, because obviously like private contractors operate under a totally different code of ethic. They have way reduced standards for like transparency and way different, like there's totally different process of taking them to court. So it's almost like because the government doesn't have to outsource it, like that it's usually not that much cheaper to run a private prison than it is a regular prison, and the financial incentives aren't very different. So the fact that they're deliberately choosing to have a federal agency be privately contracted in detention should raise a lot of questions for people.
So let's talk about the things going on. So we've picked apart ICE and stuff. So right now in February, almost every state, and I've been trying to find particulars to share, but there's different groups that are doing ICE protests. Of course, everyone knows Seattle and Portland is protesting ICE for a long time, and we're making some headway and there's things changing. But I know Caboose has his going down in Georgia, and then there's different ones. If you could just look locally, there's different, where your ICE detention centers are and stuff. From February 14th, actually, Valentine's Day, there's a big one in Seattle.
Nice.
Portland's is ongoing. And then I noticed that in almost every major city, there's one between Valentine's Day and the 20th, a protest or organized thing going on. So look into your areas and figure out what's going on. And then just join in with whoever's doing that. And let's see if we actually raise enough attention nationally to the ICE issue that we can say, hey, this isn't working. This is detaining people illegally for a ridiculous amount of time. It's inhumane. There's been abuses and genocide involved. These are basically concentration camps. Kids have been lost. It's time for this to stop, and it's time for us to stop ignoring it.
And that's particularly with the Atlanta thing. Like I'm deliberately reaching out to like conservative groups to be like, okay, even if you are some like red-blooded, God-fearing, like NASCAR-watching American that wants to reduce illegal immigration and deport criminals or whatever, even if you feel all that way, I know for a fact in your heart that you do not want women losing the right to have children. Like I know for a fact that will bother you if you are a legitimate conservative, and that is exactly what's going on here. There's been tons of evidence and documentation out of it. There's been whistleblowers. Even if you aren't a abolish ICE person, even if you aren't a like open borders person, you should be mad about this. You should get involved with us to at least try to get those women justice and stop this fucking practice at this place. You should be there with us. Even if you don't agree on every other thing we talk about. Like that should be a horrifying enough fucking thing to be addressed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason for everybody to get involved in this issue. I mean, it really just ICE shouldn't exist in general. But if somebody's worried about...
Even if you don't agree with us politically on this, even if you think the borders need protected and go America and keep everyone else out, it's still the things that are going on with this are not okay.
Yeah, because
it is a violation of our human rights, of anybody's human rights.
Yeah, because there's too many federal agencies. That's what you got to understand is like a lot of people, they get really uppity with like libertarians and stuff when they talk about abolishing like one particular federal agency or another. A lot of these are like new. A lot of these agencies were created under Bush even. Like the DHS was under Bush. And when they continue to like blow apart into smaller chunks, these federal agencies and what their responsibilities are, it is increasingly harder to actually like address and go after them and get transparency on what they're doing. So that I'm like before ICE, there was just Customs and Border Enforcement. And there was more transparency under that. Then they went ahead and created ICE. And ever since then, it's been constant problems. So people got to understand that like when people talk about like abolish ICE, not even everyone that's saying that is saying like open borders and stuff like that. They're saying just fuck this particular federal agency in the same way that I can be like, hey, I'm not saying like the private American citizen should be able to own like nuclear missiles or something like that. But fuck the ATF because it's the organization itself. People get the politics tied up with the actual organization way too much to where they can't see that like some of these are just fucked up. Like some of these organizations are just fucked up. They need to go.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm very passionate
all of a sudden.
Yeah, that's one of the main points of this protest.
Yeah. So I guess. Sorry, would you?
So I'd like to give a little story if I could. So I'm actually second generation Hungarian. My grandpa came over illegally. He was scared to death his whole entire life, even after he was granted amnesty. And that's a story that's been passed down to us since he came over. He was 17, came on a stolen passport or his uncle's papers. It's a little fuzzy on that. But I mean, that fear has been passed down through generations, that, like, I even realized how fearful he was and that he could have been deported, so like it really does affect me when people are like, oh, immigrants have no place here. Well, if he didn't risk his life to come over, I wouldn't be here.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
I think they just dramatically like underestimate how many people are in that exact situation. Like when they think migrant, they're thinking of like someone with flip flops and short shorts jumping the border and coming in. They don't realize that that's not like the majority of what is going on here.
I have a friend whose mother came over from Mexico because her brother, I believe, was like 9 or 11, and he was killed over a game of dice from the cartel. So their mother sent her and her sister over, and she still has scars from the barbed wire. She ended up running a very successful restaurant here in Lansing, became a pillar of Lansing. But yeah, she came over illegal. She still has the scars to show that.
And we are a nation of immigrants.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like just a couple generations in the US on either side. Any of us with more pale skin aren't indigenous to here. We have immigrant stories. This used to be the place to come to, and it used to be so easy. You just got on a bus and checked in at Ellis Island. You used to be given land. I mean, why do we have such a hostile view of immigration now? It's like, oh no, we came and took it over. So now we're gonna not make it so friendly and open. It's pretty sad, actually, and this is still happening to people that are indigenous to this continent too. Mm-hmm. Is just brutal that it's still happening, and it's really time for it to stop.
Yeah, it definitely, like, to that point, the whole immigration system is so screwed up to where like very few people actually get rejected, but they have to go through so much bullshit and paperwork and fucking proving things. And it's a very common story of I would meet dudes in Chicago and be like, yeah, I'm here working. For some reason, they approved my immigration status, but my wife's been waiting for like 6 months. She's still like over in England, and we just don't know what's going on with it. Because like the whole system is just bureaucratic and fucked up and inefficient and confusing and stupid. And there's been like no attempt to address it for my whole fucking life, pretty much. And
it sometimes it takes years and thousands of dollars to get your green card or your citizenship or what is the other one? A neutralized citizenship.
Yeah.
Like when I
naturalized citizen.
Naturalized.
Yes, thank you. When I worked at the polls, I actually had to turn people away because they were natural. They
naturalized.
Not naturalized or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, but it was so heartbreaking because they like actually came in to vote and they wanted to perform that,
civic duty.
Yeah, be part of voting, and I had to turn them away because they didn't have the correct documentation.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people, like when we talk about overstaying their visa or expired green cards and stuff, like there's a lot of people with green cards that then are like applying to be full citizens, and the system's so bureaucratic and like bullshit, and there's so many hoops to jump through that some of these people's green cards expire while they're trying to get approved for citizenship, and they would be approved, but like just time runs out. And these are the same kind of people, that like under any other time, under any other system, like they would just, green stamp. Okay, cool. Your green card's you're now a full citizen. But because the system's so screwed up and there's so many like other things going on in the background, they end up becoming illegal immigrants while waiting to become legal immigrants. And, a lot of people have green cards for years, and it's like, okay, well, we roped you along to become a citizen of the United States for months and months and months and months. But now go back to your country you haven't lived in for like years because we took too long to process your immigration status. Like,
has anybody ever really looked at the tests that they have to take?
Yeah, it's quite a bit.
I had an ex from Lebanon, and I read over the test, and I was like, holy crap, I can't even... some of the questions I'm like, I don't even know, and I'm a citizen.
Yeah. What is the preamble of the fucking Declaration of Independence? I challenge the average American to be able to recite that from memory.
It's like city capitals, presidents, like just
What about
knowing
our
all this stuff.
congressmen? How many
Yeah, right.
congressmen do we have that could do it?
Yeah, exactly. I challenge our current or former fucking president to do that. You know, like
My
Yeah,
friend, one of my
no.
friend's parents were rushing to do the test so that his kids wouldn't have to, because one of them, we were getting
Mhm.
ready to graduate high school, and he was like, we had a party for his dad finishing the test. It was
That's fucking.
kind of awesome. Yeah.
So I guess to wrap up, just give us the kind of like final details on what you're planning to kind of do, like time schedule. You already said where it's at, so
Yeah. So the Atlanta Immigration Court, we're going to show up at 1 p.m. And yeah, so Boogaloo is going to be having Hawaiian shirts, guns, and stuff. But anybody else who wants to come. I mean, make your
You
voice heard.
and you
You
plan
come
We're
on
in-
actually there's going to be we're a caravan coming down from the north.
Yeah.
To come down and support this. Also, it is a very important thing that needs to be supported.
See, I didn't know that update because I'm not as active and everything. That's awesome. You're the best. You're so good at this. See, this is what this is all about right here. Because and then you guys just plan on hanging out for a couple hours, like signs, usual picketing, going home, pretty much. Very standard protest.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. I'm gonna get there. We're gonna have signs and stuff, but we're gonna get there and kind of get the feel of things. Probably be there for a couple hours. Beforehand, we're gonna go try to volunteer at the Woodruff Park where they're feeding homeless people and stuff.
Awesome.
We're gonna try and do that.
Yeah, make a day out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing too. Like whenever we when we have actions, also we always try and plan it with like outreaches and things like that. So anybody who comes out of town, it's like you can make a full day out of it. You can come and help the community, then you can come and do your action, and then we just go and we hang and chill for a little bit. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to go down.
And then Boogie Shaman, I think he's gonna do a little barbecue. And if you want to reach me, Twitter is just this. This is the
Caboose.
thing.
And we have the UVA Twitter. I'll link that out on my account, and you guys can all blast it out. And that'll kind of be for now the sort of gathering place for people that kind of have the ideology we all have of working together to solve these problems. We can all kind of congregate on that Twitter. But we do have other things in the works. There's also a Facebook page. I can drop links to that too after this. And we're working on kind of having chats and other things for people to be able to more organize their own thing locally. And it doesn't matter what group you're affiliated with.
Or no group. We want all
or
you
no group at all.
That just feel called to activism and want to be involved, that maybe don't feel aligned with any group. As you see, like we have a lot of different ideologies here, but the issues we're going to focus on are the things that almost all humans can agree on. The things that we're big on is anti-authoritarianism. We think that everything is getting too big and powerful and too controlling, and it's oppressing and exploiting people. And we are vehemently firm about supporting human rights in general, no exceptions.
Yeah, and working in your community, because that's where it all begins, is in your community.
Yeah, we're trying to build that. We're trying to build up this local activist network, and this works great because like you're totally welcome at the UVA if you don't even care about ICE at all, whatever. But you're super interested in something else we're working on. The whole point is, the whole kind of idea behind it is tabling. We're not going to talk about the things we have disagreements on. We're going to focus on the things we agree upon, and we're going to take direct action on those things one at a time. So if you're a person that's you're super passionate about being anti-ICE, but you might not want to show up to like a Boogaloo, like with Boogaloo Boys, to like a Second Amendment protest or something like that. You have no pressure to do so. But like that's just kind of how we're going through this, is we want to bring people together and get more concentrated in more numbers at these actions, and people to feel more comfortable with it, because the average individual might be afraid to show up to a BLM event, or might be afraid to show up to a Boogaloo event, or an AFA event, because they don't identify as that group. To where we're trying to be a little more official and a little more neutral on that part of it, to be more focused and direct on what the actual problem is.
And I believe that most citizens in this country hate what's going on with ICE. I believe that you could probably go up and that 7 out of 10 people you talk to in this country are appalled by what's going on with ICE. if we can just get a few thousand in every region out to say this has to stop, we can enact change.
Yeah, and I mean, you don't really have to be special, or you don't have to have a ton of people with you, because I'm just a dude and I'm not really too bright. I just felt like, hey, I don't like this thing happening. I want to say something about it, because as long as you're silent, whatever's going on, you're saying, yeah, I'm cool with that. So just don't be silent. Just say something about it.
Yeah, we're just be that group of people that it doesn't matter if you're the one idiot out there with the sign. Yeah, go be that one person. And if you keep if you keep doing that, eventually you won't be the only person. Like we've invited tons of groups to this Georgia event, but we have no idea if anyone's going to show up. But it doesn't matter if no one shows up. We're still going to be there. There's been plenty of events that I've gone to and that me and Kitty have gone to together where there was like nobody there, but we still showed up, and that's all that matters. So,
I showed up to your event all by myself.
Exactly. So that's kind of just what it's all about, and getting off of the internet. The internet is good for organizing. The internet is not good for solutions. You need on the ground action. You need to organize campaigns and coordinate campaigns against these issues, and we want this to be a space for that. Because a lot of times, like when you like turn on CNN or something, they'll be like, oh, there was a Black Lives Matter protest in like Kenosha or something. They never talk to the organizers. They never talk to they might interview like one or two random protesters, but they never actually give the community a platform to talk about like, hey, we're not just out here for this broad general concept BLM. Like, here's this thing that happened in our local community that you might not even heard about. Here's this, instance of police brutality that didn't even hit the news. And that happens all the time. Everyone in this call can advocate to that. We're like, we've gone to protests for unnamed victims that never once even got an article written on them, let alone like played on mainstream news. And we want to kind of like get more of that going and get more attention and eyeballs on the smaller but still equally important events like that are going on every day.
And in truth, like some people are hesitant to protest or direct action. This is one of the most patriotic things we do. This is where we actually stand up and, have complaints with our government and regress. And it is how we've moved policy in this country from the beginning, from the Tea Party. It's like there has been a history of direct action and speaking up and getting together and addressing our government in mass that was glorified even by our founding fathers. And I think that coming together and doing it in the name of unity, like there are issues that we all agree on. Let's work together instead of being divided. That is what this is all about.
Yeah. So, yep. I hope you liked our little trial run of this. I'm gonna try to make it a weekly thing.
Yay, podcast number 1.
Yeah, we're try to make it a weekly thing. We'll try to get different guests on. It won't always just be people you would expect. We're gonna try to get a lot of different characters and people that have stories to tell and important things to say and events going on, and try to get them on. I think it will be every Thursday at 8, but I'll have to figure that out. And as we get everything else set up, I'll let you guys know. But anyone got any closing remarks before we get out of here? Seeing we're coming up on an hour here.
I'm excited for the 20th.
Yeah,
me too.
I'm excited
Are you guys coming
to
down?
meet people from different regions. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, she travels. She's a warrior.
Yeah, I travel too, but
I'm
you have responsibilities.
Pacific Northwest to Georgia, that's a bit much.
Yeah, you're a little further than we are.
I forgot to mention Ford Fisher will be there. Most of y'all know he's an independent journalist. He does fucking spectacular work. He's probably one of the best people out there. He's flying in, so he'll be there. And awesome. Definitely every single Boogaloo event we've done, because there's only been 3 like specifically Boogaloo events, has like caused all sorts of like very interesting things to happen. Obviously with the first one being the Unity March and then J17. So like this will be like the 3rd one. And so I'm really curious how it'll go. I think it will go really well. So I'm pretty excited for it.
Yeah. Hopefully
what's up?
A reporter when they interviewed me over the phone the other day, and they were like, so how do you explain your view as an organizer or an activist? I was like, well, I wouldn't really describe myself. I don't know. It's like, oh, so
Figuring it out.
who organized it? And I was like, oh, I guess I did. So I guess I am an organizer.
But that's the perfect thing is like, you never done this before. Like I've never run a podcast like that.
Yeah.
That was the first speech I ever gave. That was the first interview I ever gave. It was the first podcast I ever went on. And this is the first podcast I'm ever running. This has all been within 2 weeks. And I'm filming this off of a $20 Amazon GoPro, off of a cheap computer in a tiny apartment. I'm just some guy. Like there's nothing unique or special about any of us. We just said, hey, we're gonna do this. Fuck it. And if we don't know what we're doing, then we're just gonna figure it out as we go along. So like you can do what we're doing. Everyone watching this, anyone who might watch this, you can do this, and we need more of it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so thanks y'all are watching. Thank you, Caboose, for entertaining our sloppy production the very first time. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah,
thanks for the plug.
Yeah, of course. So try to get more things going. And thanks everybody, and have a good night.
Yep. Bye.